Prince Loki of Elbaf is currently stuck chained to a rock, but do not let this fool you. Despite his current predicament, this character may actually be one of the strongest fighters in all of One Piece. What we know of Loki's backstory is that he is the son of the former king of Elbaf. Loki wanted the legendary devil fruit that was in his father's possession, which made him murder his own father to get it. Rather than becoming the next king, however, Loki was imprisoned. This is where we come to the most important part of the story, which is that it took all of the warriors of Elbaf to detain Loki. The reason why this is so important is because Elbaf in One Piece is repeatedly called the strongest nation in the world. This is also not mere hyperbole, and we have ways to actually contextualize just how powerful Loki by himself rivaling all the warriors of Elbaf makes him. The first hint comes from the Whole Cake Island arc, where it's revealed that Big Mom years ago almost succeeded in forging an alliance with Elbaf through marrying her daughter Lola to Loki himself. The way Big Mom describes it, an alliance between the warriors of Elbaf and her pirate crew would have been so powerful that with it, she could have beaten Shanks, Kaido, and Whitebeard, and become the next pirate king. This also happened years in the past, meaning that Whitebeard at this point in time could have been closer to his prime, and not had his illness from Marineford. Big Mom's words built the Giants of Elbaf up as an incredible fighting force. But there is more. As said before, Elbaf has the title, the strongest nation in the world. What does this actually mean in the context of the One Piece world, however? In the original Japanese, the words used to describe Elbaf are Sekai Ichi no Kyokoku, where a more literal translation would be something like the world's #1 strongest country. From a bit of research I've done for this video, Kyokoku in Japanese is often used to describe countries with a lot of military power, and in the current day is used when referring to states like the US and China. Loki himself refers to Elbaf with a slightly different title, where he calls the country Sekai Saikyo no Okoku, which means the world's strongest kingdom. Both of these titles, however, mean essentially the same thing. Elbaf's military should be one of the most powerful forces in the entire One Piece world. If Loki by himself was able to rival all of Elbaf's warriors, then a good way to get some idea of his power is by looking at the other strong countries and kingdoms we've seen in the story, as Elbaf is supposedly stronger than all of them. Let's start by looking at one of the most important nations in the setting, Wano Country. Wano Country's military might was arguably at its strongest when Kaido ruled over Wano. At this point in time, Wano's military was a combination of the Beast Pirates crew and Orochi's samurai. While the latter weren't particularly noteworthy, the former were a Yonko crew, led by Kaido himself. If Elbaf's warriors were a stronger military than this, could this mean that Loki is potentially even stronger than Kaido? Well, there is one thing to consider here, which is that the Beast Pirates may not have officially been considered a part of Wano's military. While Kaido resided in Wano, and while his men pillaged the land for all that it was worth, Orochi was still considered to be the official ruler of the country. The way Orochi describes it, him and Kaido were partners, with their own territories in the country. What this means is that, while Elbaf's warriors could still be stronger than the entirety of the Beast Pirates, this may not be the best comparison, because of the vague situation of what Wano's military actually was at this point in time. I will return to the question of whether Loki is stronger than Kaido later in the video, but before that, I'll just make one thing clear, which is that even if we don't use Wano as our example, it can be very confidently said that Elbaf's warriors are at least as strong as a Yonko crew. This is because Totland, the country ruled by the Big Mom pirates, is very clearly a country where the pirates serve as the country's military force. Totland is pretty much a country ruled entirely by the Big Mom pirates, where Big Mom is the queen and her children are the official ministers that rule over the different islands of the country. To add to this, the first statement in the story about Elbaf being the strongest country in the world comes from Charlotte Chiffon, who is one of Big Mom's daughters. As it is her homeland, where she had lived all her life, Chiffon very likely thinks of Totland to be a real country, and not just some rogue pirate gang. In other words, what Chiffon is saying is that Elbaf's military is actually superior to Totland's military. If there's any validity to the claim that Elbaf is the strongest country, and to the claim that it required all of Elbaf's warriors to detain Loki, then I think this is a pretty clear-cut case. Loki should be someone who could take a boat to Totland and actually be able to conquer the entire country by himself, which means beating all of the Big Mom pirates, including Big Mom herself. If this is true, then there is really no getting around it. Loki should be a Yonko caliber character. The only way this isn't the case is if these two claims about the strength of Loki and Elbaf's warriors are not true. All the evidence, however, seems to point to the claims being accurate. One reason is that the characters making these claims should be biased against the idea of this video. As already brought up, Chiffon should be biased towards Totland, as it is literally her home, yet she still called Elbaf the strongest country. The giant telling Loki's backstory also clearly hates Loki, yet he still said that it required all their warriors to stop him. Personally, I do not really understand why the giants don't like Loki. Sure, he killed his father, but he also had this nice moment where he said, "Please like this video so that the fans will know that I'm Yonko level." Elbaf's status as the strongest country is also backed up by the greater lore of the One Piece story. The world government wants to rule over the entire planet, and they are constantly in the process of conquering new land under their flag. Yet they have apparently never managed to conquer Elbaf. Elbaf is also clearly a kingdom they would very gladly want to take over. When Saint Valkyrie meets Dorian Broggy on Egghead, he says that the government has much to settle with the giants. The government has for years been funding research on gigantification, and wants giant soldiers so badly that they actually kidnap orphans from Elbaf to serve in the Marines. Elbaf is also seemingly deeply rooted in the events of the Void Century, where they actually worship sun god Nika, which means that the world government probably desperately wants to conquer them, just to suppress this information. Yet, the government hasn't succeeded, and Elbaf is an independent nation. From what we've seen, this is also a feat that rests purely on the shoulders of its warriors. Unlike for example Zou, it is apparently very easy to navigate to Elbaf, where you only have to follow the log post to reach the island. Elbaf also does not appear to be a natural fortress like Wano, where Elbaf's borders are seemingly only protected by the sea. If there is a reason why Elbaf has managed to stay independent, everything is pointing to this being because of her military. Let's say that everything said so far in this video is true. Loki alone is able to rival the combined might of all of Elbaf's warriors, and this makes him a character on the level of the Emperors. Could Loki actually be even stronger than this? This idea comes from what the giant telling Loki's backstory said in the end, which was that if Loki was freed, then not just Elbaf, but the entire world would be brought to ruin. This is pretty ominous. It could mean that, even though the warriors of Elbaf managed to detain him last time, they only got lucky, and that they under normal circumstances could not have beaten Loki. One Piece is certainly full of moments like this, where a stronger character loses in a fight, due to things like foul play or distractions. I understand that this is extremely speculative, but what is far more concrete, however, is that Loki does actually have the potential to be even stronger than what was discussed earlier in this video. This is due to Elbaf's military being potentially way stronger than what was brought up before. Elbaf being a somewhat stronger country than a place like Totland is genuinely just the minimum estimate of their power. Elbaf's title of the strongest country could in its extremity mean that there's a significant gap between their power and the second strongest country in the world. This means that, for all we know, Elbaf's warriors could even be multiple times stronger than a Yonko crew like the Big Mom pirates. If Elbaf's warriors are potentially this powerful, Could Loki rivaling their combined might mean that he's a character even above the Yonko? While an interesting idea, this is where I'm going to have to throw a bit of cold water on this video. Based on the words of most of the characters in the story, the two characters who have the reputation as being the strongest people in recent history are Whitebeard and Kaido. This is something not only believed by the world at large, but by Whitebeard and Kaido themselves. Now, I myself think reputation is never 100% accurate proof in One Piece, and I made a whole video about why, despite them not having the same reputation as being the strongest, Joy Boy and Imu have likely always been more powerful than Whitebeard, Kaido, or even Roger. Could this same logic then also apply to Loki? Elbaf is a nation closed off from the rest of the world. So, like with Imu, it could be that Whitebeard, Kaido, nor most of the world have heard about Loki or his strength. I, however, do not think this is accurate, and at the very least, Kaido was probably aware of Loki's existence. This is because based on his reaction in chapter 1130, Jinbei apparently already knew of Loki before the Elbaf arc, meaning that he must be at least a somewhat known figure outside Elbaf. Because Kaido was not only an emperor with a large information network, but also someone who lived literally next door to Elbaf, it is very likely that he knew of Loki, and possibly even about his strength. Yet, Kaido still declared to Luffy that there was no one in the world stronger than him. While Kaido has an ego, he was also constantly looking for someone stronger than him, and was actually overjoyed when Luffy proved that he can fight evenly with him. Still, despite them being neighbors, it is also possible that Kaido had not heard about Loki, or at the least, not about his strength. So, while the story is definitely pointing towards Loki being a Yonko level character, we genuinely just have to wait and see to get a better picture of how he would stack up against the emperors individually. To briefly summarize this whole video, because Loki by himself was able to rival the combined strength of all of Elbaf's warriors, he is very likely a character on the level of the Yonko. This is due to the reputation of Elbaf being the strongest country in the world, which based on what we know from the story, is very likely accurate, and not just an exaggeration. And while it's also possible that Loki is someone even stronger than the emperors, there is also reason to think that he is still below someone like Kaido, and we just have to wait and see before answering that question. If you enjoy my content and have already perhaps watched my other videos, I'd like to remind you that the channel does have a membership program, where you get things like custom badges and access to old videos. Definitely consider checking it out if you're interested. And thanks a lot for watching this video to the end.